Aloha, and welcome to Live at the Legislature, where every week we bring you the bills and events happening down at the state capitol. Representing the House Majority Democrats this morning, we have Representative Takashi Ohno, who represents District 27, Nu'uanu, Laliha, Pu'unui, and Alava Heights. Good morning, Representative. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, James. Good morning, Alelo. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we're nearing the end of a long 2020 legislative session. It's been extended because of the coronavirus, but there are some very critical bills that have happened, and nothing, I think, overall is more important than the state budget. Can you tell us a little bit about Senate Bill 126 and what was in that state budget? Tell us about what happened there.
I'd be happy to. Here at the state legislature, we've reconvened with the purpose of hearing and passing a big budget bill. The federal government sent us a lot of money through the CARES Act, and we have until the end of the year to spend it. We have also a budget to create for our next fiscal year 21, which starts on July 1st. Hearing from my community during this pandemic time, the desperation and frustration from so many residents as they've struggled to get in touch with unemployment, to make ends meet. It's been unlike anything I've heard during my 8 years in office, which is why I'm thrilled that we put some budgetary priorities that will set to incentivize and spark our economy. Most of the money we're going to be spending is actually for unemployment insurance and for rent assistance. But there are 3 things in this budget that I want to highlight to our listeners today that I think are going to get our economy back on track. The first one is we're appropriating $15 million to be given as grants to local companies who are willing to create PPE or hand sanitizers. I guess the most common example is those distilleries who've changed their mission and changed their operations from, rather than creating libations or adult beverages, they're now creating hand sanitizer. We want to support those companies who are going to help us keep up with the demand for PPE and hand sanitizer. We're giving also $2 million to the Department of Agriculture to spur that industry, to try to create new opportunities for new farmers. Our ag lands here in Hawaii set us apart from anywhere else in the world. I think that's a wise investment. Finally, there's $36 million that we are investing into a program that we're naming Hawaii Works. It's modeled after a conservation corps, where we're going to be having companies with 50 or less employees, nonprofits, even government agencies, and just private businesses for them to hire people. We want these industries to be in sectors that are not related to tourism because we want to be diversifying our economy. All these things I think are going to put our businesses back to work. I think it's a wise investment with the CARES Act money. I'm looking forward to hearing from my constituents, and hopefully it changes the conversation. Listen, when COVID-19 hit, I think we were all on board, and we understood that if we don't shut down Hawaii and keep this from spreading, there would be consequences. Right now, the opposite is true as well. If we wait too long before incentivizing business, putting people back to work, there's similarly going to be consequences.
Now, a lot of that money you're talking about was federal CARES Act money, correct?
That's right.
Now, so how long until that money can actually reach the people? Will that be pretty quick, that unemployment and other things actually get to people who need it?
Well, we intend to pass a budget as soon as possible. Again, the new fiscal year starts July 1st. So within that first month, hopefully the governor is going to be sending that money to his departments, and those departments can start executing their plan.
As quick as possible. Okay.
ASAP.
Now, I know there was another issue you were very interested in this session, and that's the inmate release program. And that's where, in worries about the coronavirus, prisoners were released. Sometimes it seems a little too soon. What do you think about that program and how it went?
It was very concerning, to say the least. I was in touch with folks with Domestic Violence Action Center. They were very concerned because some of their clients were worried that the new introduction of some of those individuals may cause harm to their families. I've spoken to residents in my district who have, in the middle of the night, turned a corner and found a stranger in their home. That is a jarring, to say the least, terrifying experience that I don't want anyone ever to have in their own home. Some of the critiques I have of the issue of this program were that the special master who was appointed, Special Master Foley, he was appointed to oversee the program. I thought that he did not take a strong step in putting his leadership and stamp on the program. Instead, he let the choices be made by various judges when he could have authored, or he could have asked that all these folks need ankle monitors. He could have had everyone also be sure that there was a plan to make sure that they would be monitored. Rather, he let those decisions out to the system, and some of those things didn't come to pass. Another criticism I have is just very simply that during this time in March and April, the courts allowed inmates out who did not have an address. And you might recall that during these months of March and April, there was a stay-at-home order where we were supposed to be at home, except for very few circumstances, to prevent the spread of the pandemic, to prevent the spread of COVID-19. During that time, the courts intentionally let out people with no home addresses, knowing that they would be violating that stay-at-home order. In the end, the Public Safety Department reported that there are 0 cases that were found in our prisons and jails. The public defender is the one who started this process. He initially wrote that it was inevitable that COVID-19 would be entering our jails. We found that to be false. I think that he's not an epidemiologist, and I feel that the entire premise of this program turned out to be false.
Doesn't sound like they thought it through very well. Well, on a lighter note, every House session begins with an invocation by someone. And last week, you had a very unique invocation for the representatives. What did you do, and why did you do that?
I'm glad you mentioned that, James. As I've grown older, I've recognized that I've become very good at staying in my comfort zone, that I developed all sorts of ways to avoid challenging myself, avoid nervous situations. As a result, last year, I tried something new. I got myself a guitar. I struggled through learning bar chords and picking patterns, but I wanted to share my progress with you folks. And so I played a rendition of In My Life by the Beatles. I was equally nervous and relieved that I did it. I think it's just a mindset of challenging yourself and embracing new opportunities, regardless of how they make you feel.
Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing a lighter moment to a very serious time. And thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. And to all our viewers, we'll see you again next week on Live at the Legislature.
Thanks, everyone.
Aloha and welcome back to Live at the Legislature. I'm the Senate's Communications Director, Jesse Broder Van Dyke, and my guest this week is Senator Stanley Chang, who represents parts of East Oahu and is chairman of the Housing Committee. Senator Chang, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
We're in the middle of the session right now, and you have a bunch of bills pending in your Housing Committee. Can you give us an update on what's happening there?
Sure. We're in very difficult economic times right now. but we are hoping that housing will lead the way to an economic recovery for our state. And so we've been working on some of the bills that have carried over from before the pandemic to really jumpstart the affordable housing process. One of them would be to lift the bond ceiling so that the state's affordable housing bonds can continue to be issued, and that the production of this affordable housing will continue. We have another bill that would allow the housing development agencies to select among its tenants those who are impacted by the project in the community to address some of the community concerns about new housing projects. We also have a measure to extend the deadline for the acquisition of the Lahaina Front Street apartments on Maui, which are currently about to exit the affordability period. And so it's a step to help protect the tenants there from being evicted. So there are a number of measures out there, and we hope to make a small but noticeable difference as we prepare to head out of this pandemic-induced economic crisis.
And we're both working from home right now as we've been dealing with this. How's it been affecting your life to be working from home and trying to do your business?
Well, I think it's really important that we all continue to observe the safer at home instructions, the best guidance from the state and federal governments. I've been trying to do my part by staying at home as much as possible, by participating in meetings remotely, including floor sessions and committee hearings of this legislative reconvene session. I actually think that in a lot of ways my productivity has gone up because we don't have the constant distractions, the phone ringing, that kind of thing. And it's much easier to slip in and out of meetings online. And so I've been really pleased about that. And in some ways, I'm going to miss this period when it's over.
And you've been working on creative new ways to keep in touch with your constituents, like doing a podcast. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so just because we have a pandemic, it doesn't mean the housing shortage is over here in Hawaii. And in fact, according to some of the statistics that we're seeing, home prices are actually going up.
Does everyone else have audio here?
I think I can still hear you.
Okay, I can still hear you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. One of the perils of working from home.
Yes.
So just because we have this pandemic, the housing crisis is still very much, still very severe. And in fact, in many ways, it's worse than it was before. The price of housing continues to escalate, even here in Hawaii. And that's consistent with a national trend where May was actually much stronger than May 2019 in terms of pricing. And real estate analysts nationwide are actually expecting, due to low interest rates and enormous latent demand and consistent supply restrictions, construction restrictions across the country, that housing prices will continue to escalate even through this pandemic. So we think it's more important than ever to be discussing these housing issues. We're hoping that housing construction, affordable housing construction in particular, will be a major engine of economic growth to lead us out of this pandemic. And so we've started a webinar series and podcast series. We've interviewed folks from across the country, including people like the director of the Urbanity Project, Emily Hamilton at George Mason University. We've had on Professor David Callies of the University of Hawaii Law School, a very well-known real property professor here in Hawaii. And we'll continue to have the conversation with experts from Hawaii and from across the world, because I think it's critical that we keep the conversation going about how to restart this sector of our economy and to hopefully build upon that as we move forward in our economic recovery.
And you're also a member of the Labor Committee, and I know that the unemployment backlog has affected a lot of your constituents. How do you think that process is going?
Yeah, even though we're still over 3 months out from the initial wave of shutdowns in March, there are still thousands of people, including many of our constituents in East Honolulu, who have yet to see a dime of unemployment insurance and the federal plus up. And we've been working very hard. We volunteered some personnel in that initial wave of processing that was taking place at the convention center. And right now we're focusing on dealing with individuals who have come forward, who have been trying the phone numbers and the hotlines and the email addresses to no avail. We have been working closely with the department. So if you're one of them out there who is unable to access the unemployment insurance payments or the website or the hotline, please do call our office at 586-8420. That's 586-8420, and we'll do our best to help you.
And the Senate has increased its bandwidth to allow this remote participation. And in the future, it might make things easier for neighbor island residents to participate. How do you think that's worked so far as this technology we're using?
Yeah, I've introduced several bills over my 4 years in the state Senate to allow for remote participation, for upgrading the audiovisual systems at the Capitol, because this issue has been important to me since long before this pandemic started. And it's neighbor islanders, of course, but it's also local people who just don't have the time to take off in the middle of the workday to attend, a housing hearing at 1:15 p.m., a Commerce, Consumer Protection and Health hearing at 9:30 in the morning. And so I think it's critical that the legislature maintain the existing infrastructure that we've set up hastily, but also to really establish some very good video conferencing hardware and software in the Capitol so that we'll be able to participate remotely whether or not there's a pandemic. That's the only way that we can maximize transparency, maximize participation in the political process, and really get grassroots voices in the shaping of our legislation.
Well, thank you, Senator. We only have about 30 seconds left. The governor is reopening tourism after August 1st with certain testing. What do you think the future looks like?
I think the reality is that tourism will take many years to recover. I don't think it's going to snap back right away. And that's why we do need to focus on other alternatives, especially the low-hanging fruits, such as housing construction, to power our economic recovery and to prevent the exodus of tens of thousands of people out of our state.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Chang, for joining us today. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And we'll be back next week on Live at the Legislature. Mahalo.
What are you doing? We have to go. I'm gonna be late for work.
It's Tuesday morning. I gotta record Live at the Legislature on Alelo. Senate and House leadership discussing what's happening at the state capitol.
So just watch it on the news tonight. Come on, let's go.
Hey, this is like getting the news before it's news. If only I could get this remote to work.
There. Can we go now?
No DVR? No problem. Watch Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. on Channel 49.
Good morning and welcome back to the Legislative Minority segment of Live at the Legislature. Joining us this morning is Representative Bob McDermott from Eva Beach. He serves as a member of the House Select Committee on COVID-19 and was our guest last week too. Good morning, Rep. McDermott. How are you this morning?
Hey, Kyle. Good morning. And first, a shout out to you and all the guys at Alelo, Mr. Graham, and everybody working so hard to put this on every week. Really appreciate it. They have no idea, the audience, what goes into this. Technology's simple, but it's hard too. Trying to connect everything up, and for an old guy like me.
Can't thank him enough.
Yeah.
So last week, the governor announced, along with LG, Mayor of Maui, Kauai Speaker, and the Senate President, that tourism would reopen on August 1st. Did you have any reaction to that?
So, I do. So here's some good things about it. The governor moves very slow and methodically. If he didn't, I gotta turn my TV off here. Live television. If he didn't move slowly, he's being in the Department of Health. There's a constituency that says we must accept the new normal as normal, meaning the virus is out there. We're just going to be dirty like Chicago, Miami, Austin. It doesn't matter. We can't do anything about it. It's a virus. There's another group led by Josh Green, who's been like John the Baptist in the wilderness from the beginning, speaking of we need to test 3 days prior. And of course, we agree with that. Gene and I do. And this my high-tech camera fell off. Anyway, let me get this damn thing fixed here. We agree with the testing prior. He is with this recent outbreaks and flaming in the mainland. It seems that Josh Green's thoughts have won the day. They're going to test. I don't know how rigorous or robust it will be, but there will be testing. And that, listen, people don't come to Hawaii on a whim generally. They plan a vacation. So you're going to be able to get your test set up in time with a physician or a clinic or CVS or Walgreens. They are working on that now, which is a proper role of the administration. You got to be one person to set it up. But they've really lagged, Tayo. They've been so far behind the power curve because they just set the date. And I watched that press conference, and being knee deep in this, I can tell the depth of knowledge the various participants have. And it looked like the gov brought 30 guys there just to set a date. There's no plan. All right, we go back to the plan. Gene and I did a plan 6 weeks ago. It's a framework, step by step by step. I want to read something to you from one of the members who was asked about the plan yesterday. And this is why I was so concerned on the COVID committee. Quote, we have a 6-phase plan to reopen the state. The plan will be a phase plan that we will plan to utilize in phases. The phases will be planned and the planning will be phased. We will move quickly and slowly to open but remain closed. I've created a staff of staffers who will plan the phase and planning while phasing their phases. This is our reopening plan. What a load of word salad. That would make Representative Ward proud. I mean, on his best day, he couldn't do that. Such a load of well, it's a load of something. We already got it. I told the speaker yesterday, I said, have you ever read it? I mean, page 4, just go, we list the items. One of the things they have to worry about is the very important thing is our frontline employees, our workers, those in the unions in Waikiki or the rental car agency or the bus driver or anyone else who comes in contact with these visitors. If they are not tested, we are bringing in an abnormally high load of COVID to our state. Every day that the plane lands, we're not stagnant like Wichita, Kansas, which has a stagnant population. You got a freeway going through, but that's it. We're a visitor industry. People are coming here, and they come, and our infrastructure is not set up to sustain this damn camera.
Challenging unprecedented times.
What's that? Everything could go wrong this morning did, except I didn't have a fight with my wife, so I guess that's the bonus, right? Anyway, we have an opportunity to stop the COVID because we're an island. So let's do it. We have a moral obligation to drive it down to zero as best we can, and we need to do that. And it's taken the governors a while to get there, but I think he's there now, particularly with these outbreaks on the mainland that are just quite scary. They would overwhelm our ICU beds in 2 weeks if we did nothing. And they wouldn't be local people in the ICU. They'd be people from Wichita, California, Nevada. And our people can't get beds because the visitors in there. And, the way it worked in Italy, where they had just in the beginning, just an overflow. If you were over 65, you weren't going to get a ventilator. That was it. You weren't going to get one because younger people do better, right? And we didn't know much about the disease. So they were rationing healthcare. So they have time. They got 30 days. Give me 2 Marine lieutenant colonels and we can get it done. And that's why they need to use General Hara a lot more. I think he should be running this and leading it because he can do things with the testing and arrivals at the airport. He has soldiers under his command that can help us with this pandemic. You don't have to worry about overtime and things of that nature.
Right. I wanted to transition to the votes on Friday. So as was mentioned earlier, we passed the budget, Senate Bill 126. And another controversial one was Senate Bill 785, which was the negotiated collective bargaining agreement between the state and HGA. And so what was your position on that bill? It was roughly $150 million in pay raises, and you had a floor speech that was quite moving.
I guess that's from the feedback. Apparently it was. But listen, those employees are our brothers and sisters, your mother, my wife, whatever. They earned their raise. They bargained in good faith. It was just crappy timing because we're broke and the economy's dead in the water. And how do we give a $150 million raise when we have a $3.2 billion projected deficit? It just doesn't make sense. The only thing you're going to do is increase the speed of which people will be laid off. And the raises, they've earned them. I don't begrudge them. If we could have deferred it down the road a little bit, but it was a mess. And how can you give a raise when you come in from Eva Beach and you look to your right at the stadium and you see 2,000 cars lined up to get food? And these aren't junk cars, by the way. These are people who are like us on the, paycheck to paycheck. We're there. We're 2-3 checks away from not being able to pay your mortgage or whatever. These are the people. These are our neighbors. And so people ask me, what are you concerned about? What's the number one priority for your district? You get these candidate forms, and it used to be school construction. Got to buff up and undergird our schools. Now does my neighbor have health insurance? Does he have something to eat? That's the gravity of it. We're in a surreal time here, and I love my brothers and sisters, but now wasn't the time. It was just incorrect.
Right. Yeah, challenging times indeed. Rep McDermott, we are just out of time, but thank you again for joining us this week. Everyone at Olelo, thank you for setting this up, and to the viewers at home, we will see you next week. Aloha.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Olelo, guys.